He lived among us for years, dined at our tables, and befriended our generals. We never suspected the charming businessman Kamel Amin Thabet was actually Eli Cohen, Israel's most notorious spy. I was the intelligence officer who uncovered his deception. The day we discovered his true identity remains etched in my memory. A moment when years of suspicion finally materialized into certainty. Today, I'll reveal exactly how we caught Agent 88 and why his capture changed the course of Middle Eastern history. The evidence that finally exposed him, it surprised even our most seasoned operatives, challenging everything we thought we knew about counterintelligence. With perfect infiltration, as the former head of Syrian counterintelligence, I still remember the day we discovered the truth about Kamel Amin Thabet. For 3 years, this man had been the perfect social butterfly in Damascus, hosting parties for military brass and government officials in his luxurious apartment near the presidential palace. But Kamel wasn't who he claimed to be. He was Eli Cohen, Mossad Agent 88, and his infiltration of our highest circles remains the most sophisticated intelligence operation ever conducted against Syria. Let me paint a picture of Damascus in the early 1960s. Our country was experiencing political turmoil with frequent military coups, yet our counterintelligence services maintained rigorous protocols. We scrutinized foreigners, monitored communications, and maintained extensive surveillance networks. Despite these measures, Cohen slipped through our defenses with remarkable ease, arriving in January 1962 with impeccable documentation and a compelling backstory as a wealthy Syrian-born businessman returning to his homeland after success in Argentina. What made Cohen extraordinary was his complete embodiment of his fabricated identity. He became Kamel entirely. His Arabic carried the specific Aleppo accent appropriate to his background story, while his knowledge of Syrian customs, cultural nuances, and social etiquette was flawless. Even under close observation, and we did observe newcomers to Damascus social circles, he never revealed inconsistencies in his persona. Like a chameleon adapting to every environment, Cohen's genius lay in his seemingly contradictory approach to espionage. While most spies operate in shadows, he flourished in the spotlight. He rented one of the most expensive apartments in Damascus, dressed impeccably, and drove a luxury car. Rather than avoiding attention, he courted it, becoming known for his generosity, charm, and apparent patriotism for Syria. This visibility provided the perfect cover. After all, who would suspect the most visible man in Damascus of being a spy? His primary intelligence gathering technique was hosting parties. Damascus in the early 1960s had limited entertainment options, and Kamel's apartment quickly became a social hub. I recall one particularly lavish gathering, where 3 generals from our northern command competed to impress him with details of our newest Soviet weaponry. At another soiree, the deputy defense minister drunkenly sketched our Golan Heights fortifications on a napkin while explaining why they were impenetrable. Military officers, government officials, and business elites eagerly accepted his invitations to gatherings where French champagne flowed and beautiful women were often present. In this relaxed atmosphere, tongues loosened. Cohen's operation demonstrated remarkable patience. He built relationships gradually, earning trust through months of seemingly innocuous social interactions before leveraging those connections for intelligence. He befriended specifically those with access to Syria's most sensitive military information, cultivating a reputation as a patriotic businessman, eager to contribute to Syria's development. One of his most valuable connections was with General Amin el-Hafez, who would later become Syria's president. Through this relationship, Cohen gained unprecedented access to military installations normally off-limits to civilians. He was taken on tours of our fortifications along the Golan Heights, critical strategic territory. During these visits, he asked innocent-sounding questions that elicited detailed explanations of our defensive positions. Cohen's intelligence value to Israel went beyond military information. He provided crucial insights into Syria's political climate, identifying internal conflicts and power struggles within the Ba'ath Party and military leadership. This human intelligence, understanding the motivations and relationships of key decision-makers, was perhaps even more valuable than technical details about our defenses. The depth of Cohen's acceptance reached almost comical levels of irony. He was frequently consulted on government matters related to Israel, with officials valuing his supposedly astute analysis of the enemy. In one particularly audacious episode, he was asked to review Syrian intelligence reports about suspected Israeli spies operating in Damascus, effectively investigating himself. His apartment's location provided another advantage. Situated opposite the Syrian army headquarters, he could observe military personnel movements, noting patterns indicating strategic changes. From his balcony, he counted tanks and artillery pieces being moved at night, providing Israel with accurate assessments of our military strength. Cohen transmitted intelligence using a high-frequency radio transmitter concealed in his apartment. These transmissions typically occurred in early morning hours, when radio monitoring was at its lowest capacity, another example of his meticulous operational security. The effectiveness of Cohen's infiltration becomes apparent when you consider that at one point he was being considered for a high-ranking position in the Syrian Ministry of Defense. An Israeli spy, merely appointed to oversee the very defenses designed to protect against Israel, a complete compromise of our national security apparatus. Yet for all his careful planning, Cohen made mistakes. His trips to Israel required explanations, and his story about visiting business interests sometimes contained inconsistencies. These trips followed suspicious patterns, occurring during Jewish holidays. Additionally, his unusual interest in specific military matters occasionally raised eyebrows among more security-conscious officials. What made Cohen's deception particularly painful for Syria was the genuine friendships he formed. Many senior officials considered him a close personal friend. When his true identity was revealed, this sense of personal betrayal compounded the professional security failure. The most haunting aspect from our perspective was our uncertainty about what information had been compromised, forcing extensive changes to military positions, communication protocols, and security procedures. The first red flags. The electromagnetic spectrum holds many secrets, especially for those of us trained to listen to its whispers. While we had been focusing on human intelligence and physical surveillance, the first real clue to our mysterious spy came through invisible waves traveling through the night air of Damascus. In counterintelligence, the smallest patterns often reveal the biggest threats, and in late 1964, an observant radio operator on our team noticed something unusual that would eventually unravel the perfect cover of Israel's master spy. Radio detection was a fundamental part of our security apparatus in 1960s Syria. We maintained a network of monitoring stations throughout Damascus, staffed by operators trained to identify unusual patterns in radio transmissions. These positions required extraordinary patience, hours wearing headphones, listening to static and routine communications, waiting for something that didn't fit. These watchful guardians formed our first line of defense against espionage activity. One particular operator, I'll call him Fareed to protect his identity even after all these years, had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect anomalies in the radio spectrum. This skill proved crucial when the first red flags appeared. "Something doesn't sound right," he reported one night in November 1964. "There's a transmission pattern I've been tracking for weeks now. Very professional, very brief, always at odd hours." This was our first substantial lead. The transmissions Fareed detected were textbook espionage communications, brief, encrypted bursts of data sent at seemingly random intervals. Like fleeting whispers in the dark, these burst transmissions compressed several minutes of information into mere seconds, making them extraordinarily difficult to pinpoint. Their timing was particularly suspicious, appearing during early morning hours, when Damascus slept and monitoring staffing was minimal. Most telling was their correlation with important events. signals would appear hours after defense minister meetings or military planning sessions, suggesting someone was communicating sensitive information when they believed detection was least likely. We immediately deployed additional direction-finding equipment throughout Damascus. Using triangulation techniques, these systems could potentially locate the transmission source by measuring signal strength from multiple locations. But our target was extraordinarily cautious, never staying on air long enough for our somewhat outdated equipment to get an accurate fix. "It's like trying to catch smoke," one frustrated technician told me. "By the time we register the signal strength and begin triangulation, the transmission has already ended. We needed the transmitter to make a mistake, to stay on air longer, to transmit during daylight, or to establish a pattern we could anticipate." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One of our analysts, who happened to be Jewish himself, noticed peculiar gaps in the transmission schedule. "Look at these dates, October 17th through 18th last year. No transmissions. April 18th through 19th, nothing. September 25th through 26th, silence." These dates corresponded precisely with major Jewish holidays, Yom Kippur, Passover, and Rosh Hashanah. Our analyst explained, no observant Jew would operate radio equipment during these holy days. It would be considered work, which is forbidden. This critical operational mistake revealed our spy's cultural and religious identity, creating a pattern we could use against him. This discovery narrowed our search dramatically. We knew we were looking for someone Jewish, despite whatever cover identity they had established. As we expanded our monitoring network, we began closing in on the general area of the transmissions. An upscale neighborhood in central Damascus where government officials, military officers, and foreign diplomats lived. The spy was hiding in plain sight among Syria's elite. The next correlation sent a chill through our team. We began tracking transmission patterns against travel records of prominent individuals in that neighborhood. Most showed no correlation. Transmissions continued, whether they were in Damascus or abroad. But one name jumped out immediately, Kamel Amin Thabet. The transmissions stop completely whenever Thabet leaves the country, my deputy reported, and they resume within days of his return. This pattern was too precise to be coincidental. The wealthy businessman who had charmed his way into Syria's highest circles suddenly looked very different through our investigative lens. We proceeded cautiously. The Bet had powerful connections throughout the government and military. Making accusations against someone so well connected without absolute proof would be politically dangerous. We needed to catch him in the act. The radio evidence gave us probable cause for more intensive surveillance. We monitored his movements closely, noting who he met and what happened before and after those meetings. We paid special attention to his activities following important government functions, hoping to catch him sending reports to his handlers. What made our investigation challenging was that the Bait appeared to be a model Syrian patriot. He donated generously to Syrian causes, spoke passionately about Arab unity, and seemed invested in the country's future. His cover was nearly perfect. As we intensified our monitoring, we noticed the transmissions often contained information from private settings, dinner parties, closed-door meetings, and exclusive gatherings. He wasn't stealing documents in the traditional sense. He was gathering intelligence through conversation and observation. We needed technical evidence, the smoking gun that would connect the Yapet to those mysterious radio transmissions, the Soviet connection. Every spy has one vulnerability they can't eliminate, the need to communicate. While Thabet's social engineering was nearly flawless, his radio transmissions left an electronic signature in the air, invisible but not undetectable. Our surveillance teams had done admirable work tracking these whispers in the electromagnetic spectrum, but we'd reached the limits of our capabilities. Finding a ghost requires more than determination. It requires technological superiority. I still remember the meeting where I proposed bringing in our Soviet allies. Several generals objected immediately, concerned about national pride and security implications. Why involve outsiders in our internal matters? One senior official demanded, I explained that we faced an exceptional spy who had infiltrated our highest circles. Pride wouldn't catch him. Advanced technology would. The request went through diplomatic channels, and within days, a team of Soviet counterintelligence specialists arrived in Damascus. They came without fanfare, traveling as agricultural consultants, but brought with them equipment packed in unmarked wooden crates. Their leader, Colonel Petrov, was a veteran of counterintelligence operations across Eastern Europe, with deep-set eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Show me everything you have," he requested during our first briefing. When I laid out our findings, the transmission patterns, the neighborhood we'd narrowed down, and our suspicions about Fabat, Petrov nodded thoughtfully. "This is consistent with what we've seen before," he confirmed, validating months of our work in a single sentence. The Soviets unpacked equipment in a secure facility that far surpassed our capabilities. Their direction-finding technology operated at frequency sensitivities we couldn't match, detecting the faintest signals even in split-second bursts. One device they called the Wolf could scan entire frequency bands simultaneously, recording anomalous transmissions for analysis. "Your equipment could tell you someone was broadcasting," Petrov explained. "Ours can tell you exactly where they are, even if they transmit for only 3 seconds. This was the technological edge we needed, the ability to pinpoint rather than merely detect. Beyond hardware, they brought experience." During strategy sessions, Petrov shared insights from previous operations against Israeli intelligence, outlining specific transmission protocols, frequency preferences, and timing patterns. "Your spy is using textbook Mossad methods," he concluded after examining our records. Within days, Soviet technicians established monitoring stations throughout Damascus in government buildings and requisitioned private apartments. Each station was staffed around the clock by mixed Syrian-Soviet teams, creating an invisible web across the city to enable precise triangulation. The operation wasn't without tension. Some Syrian officials remained skeptical of Soviet involvement, while others worried about what other information the Soviets might gather. I understood their concerns, but reminded them of the stakes. "This man has been feeding our secrets to Tel Aviv for years," I said during one contentious meeting. Colonel Petrov seemed amused by our internal politics. "In Moscow, we have a saying," he told me over coffee, "when the wolf is in your house, you don't argue about who brings the gun." His team worked with professional detachment, indifferent to the political sensitivities. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning in early 1965. At 4:17 a.m., 3 monitoring stations simultaneously detected a transmission burst from the Abu Rumaneh district, an upscale neighborhood where many diplomats and officials lived. "This is definitely your man," Petrov said, studying the frequency analysis. "The encryption pattern matches known Mossad protocols. This signature indicates Swiss-made equipment, probably a modified Bern-type transmitter." The cold precision of Soviet instruments had illuminated a human deception. We triangulated the signal to a single block of apartments. Now we needed patience. Petrov's team reconfigured their equipment to focus exclusively on this location, waiting for the next transmission that would confirm our suspicions. Days passed without any signals. "He may sense something," Petrov suggested. "The best agents develop instincts about when to maintain radio silence." We maintained surveillance, knowing necessity would eventually force communication. The Soviets established rotating surveillance teams near the apartment block, documenting everyone who entered or left. They cross-referenced electricity usage patterns, looking for anomalous consumption that might indicate radio equipment. This approach combined human intelligence with technical surveillance in ways we hadn't considered. As the surveillance net tightened, we cross-referenced residents against our security databases. Among them was Kamel Amin Thabet, the charming businessman who had ingratiated himself with Syria's elite. The coincidence was significant, especially when we confirmed his apartment was ideally positioned within the triangulation area. The most compelling evidence came when the Soviets analyzed historical transmission data against the Habet's known travel schedule. The correlation is perfect, Petrov reported, laying out a timeline where every absence of transmissions matched exactly with the Habet's documented trips abroad. In counterintelligence, we don't believe in perfect coincidences. The fateful transmission, perfect correlations pointed to Tibet, but counterintelligence requires more than circumstantial evidence. It demands catching the spy in the act. The transmission we had been waiting for finally came on January 19, 1965, stronger and more prolonged than any before, almost as if our target was unconsciously signaling his own demise. That morning began like any other. The team had been monitoring equipment for months, watching for Tibet's signature transmissions. At precisely 4:17 a.m., when Damascus lay quiet, the detection equipment crackled to life. The encrypted signal pattern appeared on our monitors with unmistakable clarity. Signal strength at 85%, much stronger than previous transmissions, the lead technician reported. This was unprecedented. Our target was broadcasting with significantly higher power than ever before. All three monitoring stations confirmed the transmission originating from the Abu Romaneh district, the upscale neighborhood where our suspect maintained his luxury apartment. The crucial element was the duration. Previously, the Fates transmissions had been frustratingly brief, burst transmissions lasting mere seconds. Intelligence operatives keep transmissions short precisely to avoid detection. But this January morning, the transmission continued well beyond the typical pattern. He's still transmitting, the technician announced after 30 seconds. We can narrow the location. We activated our mobile response protocol, deploying 3 vehicles with detection units to converge, while the transmission remained active. The tactical team moved through pre-dawn darkness with practiced efficiency. Each vehicle carried equipment to triangulate the signal with increasing precision. This was the moment we had rehearsed repeatedly, knowing we would get only one chance. If he completed his transmission before we pinpointed his location, our opportunity for an ironclad case would vanish. Signal strength increasing to 92%, reported the lead vehicle entering the suspect neighborhood. The operator monitored the handheld detector. We're getting closer. The second and third vehicles approached from different angles, creating a triangulation net, closing around our target. As the first vehicle turned onto the Fab Street, the detector's needle jumped. Signal at maximum strength within 50 meters. The team leader radioed standby security forces positioned throughout the neighborhood. Minutes later, Syrian security personnel established a perimeter around the apartment building. The detection unit confirmed the signal was coming from the 3rd floor, exactly where Tibet lived. The commander ordered, "Move in now, we need to catch him with equipment operating." The security team ascended silently, using a master key to access the 3rd floor hallway. The handheld detector led them directly to Tibet's door. The needle pinned at maximum, no doubt remained. The transmission was coming from inside. 4 agents burst through the door, weapons drawn. The scene they encountered became etched in Syrian counterintelligence history. Kamel Amin Tibet, the charming businessman who had ingratiated himself with Damascus's elite, hunched over a sophisticated radio transmitter, partially concealed behind a false panel in his study. His expression revealed everything. For one frozen moment, the Israeli agent's carefully constructed persona cracked, showing the shock of a professional spy caught in the act. He was mid-transmission, fingers on the encryption key, headphones over his ears. The detection equipment pointed accusingly at the transmitter. Security forces found him with his hand still on the telegraph key, recalled the operation commander. There was no possibility of denial. The timing was damning. His last report contained detailed information about a high-level meeting with President Amin al-Hafez from hours earlier, a meeting discussing sensitive military matters. Agents secured the room, photographing the equipment before searching the apartment. Tibet's composure returned as he was handcuffed and seated under guard. The perfect spy, caught in his single moment of vulnerability, actively communicating with his handlers. For our counterintelligence team, This represented the culmination of months of painstaking work. The correlation between Thabet's travel schedule and radio silence had provided direction, but this transmission delivered undeniable proof. We had caught the Israeli agent in the very act of espionage. The security team documented and dismantled the transmission equipment as evidence. Its sophistication impressed even our experienced technicians. The transmitter was concealed behind a false wall panel, nearly impossible to discover in routine searches. Only when actively transmitting could it be detected, explaining why previous sweeps yielded nothing suspicious. As dawn broke over Damascus, Kamal Amin Thabet, now revealed as Eli Cohen, Mossad Agent 88, was transported to a secure facility. News spread through Syrian intelligence. We had captured one of the most deeply embedded Israeli spies in our history. The charming socialite, who had hosted government ministers in his home, who had been considered for sensitive positions within our government, was an enemy agent transmitting our secrets to Tel Aviv for years. President Al-Hafez was immediately informed. His reaction combined personal betrayal with national security concern. Like many officials, he had met Thabet socially, never suspecting the businessman's true identity. Now he would have to consider how much sensitive information had been compromised during those seemingly innocent encounters. The hidden arsenal. Al-Hafez worried about sensitive information being leaked during social encounters, but had no idea that Cohen's apartment itself was strategically positioned to spy on government buildings he'd been invited to visit. Behind the tasteful decorations and luxury furnishings lay something far more sinister, an arsenal of espionage technology that would make even experienced intelligence officers pause. The morning after Cohen's arrest, we assembled a specialized search team. These weren't ordinary police officers, but counterintelligence experts trained to find what was meant to stay hidden. As we entered his apartment in the upscale Abu Romaneh district, everything appeared normal. At first glance, expensive furniture, tasteful art, a well-stocked bar that had hosted many of Damascus's elite, but we knew better than to trust appearances. "Start with the walls," ordered our search coordinator. "Check for hollow spaces, irregular measurements between rooms." The team moved methodically through the apartment, tapping surfaces and measuring dimensions. Within hours, we had our first discovery. In what seemed like a standard bedroom closet, an officer noticed a slight discrepancy in the measurements of the interior compared to the exterior walls. When pressed in a specific sequence, a section of the closet's back panel slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. There, nestled in custom-fitted foam padding, lay a Swiss-made radio transmitter, like a snake coiled in its nest, waiting to strike. The device was remarkably compact, about half the size of the transmitters our own intelligence services used. Its engineering was exceptional, with an automatic encryption module that could encode messages in seconds, significantly reducing transmission time and detection risk. This technology was years ahead of ours, explaining how Cohen had evaded our monitoring for so long. Multiple codebooks lay beside the transmitter, each containing different cipher systems. By regularly changing encryption methods, Cohen had made it nearly impossible for our cryptanalysts to establish patterns or break his codes. This level of operational security spoke volumes about his training and Israel's investment in his mission. "Keep searching," I instructed the team. "If he had this, there's more." The subsequent discoveries transformed the luxury apartment into a museum of deception. What looked like an ordinary can of shaving cream contained a miniature camera. A desk lamp had been modified to include document copying equipment, its light perfectly calibrated to capture clear images without drawing attention. His bathroom cabinet concealed film-developing chemicals disguised as toiletries. Each discovery was another piece in Cohen's elaborate intelligence puzzle. Perhaps most ingenious was an item from Cohen's watch collection, slightly heavier than the others. When disassembled, it revealed a miniature camera designed for surreptitious photography. With just a casual flick of his wrist, he had captured images of military installations, fortifications, and troop formations during official visits. "Sir," "You need to see this," called one of our specialists from Cohen's study. He pointed to a wall-mounted mirror positioned near the window. "This mirror serves a purpose beyond vanity." The mirror was angled precisely to view the Ministry of Defense headquarters across the street. Scratch marks on the windowsill indicated where a telescopic device had been mounted. Cohen had selected this apartment specifically for its strategic vantage point. From this single location, he could observe military officials' movements and potentially photograph important visitors. As our search deepened, we realized the apartment itself was a weapon. The living room was acoustically designed to enhance conversations while minimizing external noise, creating an environment where intoxicated officials spoke freely. The balcony offered clear lines of sight to 3 government buildings. Even the guest bathroom contained a hidden compartment where Cohen could temporarily store documents for copying. A set of notebooks found inside a false desk drawer bottom demonstrated the methodical nature of his operation. These contained systematically organized intelligence, troop movements categorized by unit and date, military capabilities assessed with professional precision, and detailed notes on our northern defenses, particularly the Golan Heights. He was systematically mapping our entire defensive strategy, our senior analyst observed after reviewing the materials. By the 3rd day, the apartment had yielded so much equipment that categorization became necessary. Behind an electrical outlet, we found a device that could detect power usage changes in nearby buildings, allowing Cohen to identify when counter-surveillance operations might be active in his neighborhood. As we cataloged each piece of equipment, an image emerged of a meticulously prepared intelligence operative with state-of-the-art support. The sophistication of his tools indicated Cohen's critical importance to Israeli intelligence, each device a star in his constellation of deception. Perhaps most chilling was a locked metal box concealed in the air conditioning duct. Inside were detailed diagrams of a water diversion project on the Jordan River. Plans known to only a handful of government officials. Cohen's handwritten notes analyzed vulnerabilities and identified key points where the system could be compromised. This specific intelligence suggested access to our most sensitive national security information through his network of unwitting contacts. The interrogation, finding Cohen's hidden equipment, was just the beginning. Now we had to crack something far more sophisticated than any radio transmitter. The mind of a man who had lived a perfect life for years. What we didn't expect was that this charming socialite would transform into one of the most disciplined prisoners we'd ever encountered, maintaining his cover story with unwavering conviction until we discovered the one piece of evidence he couldn't explain away. After his arrest, we transferred Cohen to a special detention facility on the outskirts of Damascus, completely isolated from other prisoners. The facility had been designed specifically for high-value intelligence targets. A stark concrete structure, with windowless cells and sophisticated sound monitoring equipment. For the first 72 hours, we left him completely alone with minimal food and water. A standard procedure to disorient and weaken a subject's resolve before formal questioning began. I assembled our interrogation team personally, selecting only our most experienced officers with backgrounds in intelligence operations. We developed a meticulous strategy, creating detailed timelines of Kamal Amin Thabet's known movements and appearances in Damascus society. Our approach would be methodical, start with what we knew to be true from public records, then systematically expose the contradictions in his cover story. When formal sessions began, Cohen demonstrated extraordinary composure. He sat straight-backed in the metal chair, maintaining eye contact with each interrogator, answering questions with the same charming confidence that had won over Damascus's elite. His responses to basic biographical details, his childhood in Aleppo, his business ventures in Argentina, his return to Syria, aligned perfectly with his documentation. When we deliberately inserted errors to test him, he would politely correct us with specific dates and locations. His Arabic remained flawless under pressure, his Aleppo accent never wavering. After 3 days without progress, we shifted tactics. We brought in officials who had socialized with him, military officers, government functionaries, business partners. The effect on these visitors was profound. Many left visibly shaken, their faces reflecting the personal betrayal they felt. One colonel who had shared family dinners with Cohen pounded his fist against the wall outside the interrogation room. "I told him about our northern defenses," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I showed him my children's photographs." By the fifth day, Colonel Mossad implemented more aggressive techniques. Sleep deprivation, standing stress positions, extreme temperature variations. Cohen endured them with remarkable resilience, straightening his posture after each session and resuming his measured responses. "He believes he is Kamal Amin Thabet," Mossad concluded after a week. Most agents maintain separation between their cover identity and true self. This one has merged them completely. Day after day, Cohen greeted his interrogators with a polite "Good morning, gentlemen," as though they were meeting for business rather than another intensive questioning session. The psychological toll on our team mounted. Interrogators began questioning their own techniques, wondering if perhaps they were wrong about his identity. 2 weeks into the interrogation, our breakthrough came unexpectedly. A junior analyst reviewing photos of Cohen's radio equipment noticed structural similarities to transmitters from a previous Israeli operation in Egypt. When we presented these images to Cohen, the first crack appeared, a momentary tightening around his eyes before his face returned to neutral. The wall began to crumble. With each new piece of evidence connecting his equipment to known Mossad operations, his responses became slightly delayed, as though he needed extra moments to align his cover story. The progression was subtle but unmistakable, like watching ice slowly begin to thaw. The decisive moment arrived when we brought in a former Mossad trainer, captured years earlier in Beirut. The instant they faced each other, Cohen's demeanor shifted. A subtle straightening of his back, a slight narrowing of his eyes. "This is Eli Cohen," the trainer stated without hesitation. "He was in my advanced communications class in 1960, one of our most promising officers." Though Cohen claimed the man was mistaken, the trainer described personal details that couldn't have been fabricated. A training scar on Cohen's shoulder, his preference for Turkish coffee, even his nickname during training. Still, Cohen maintained his denial until we presented our final evidence. Handwritten Hebrew letters found hidden in his bathroom scale. The correspondence from family members in Israel addressed him by his real name and referenced events from his pre-Mossad life. Faced with this irrefutable proof, Cohen finally fell silent. The performance that had maintained his cover through years of espionage ended with a simple nod. When he spoke again, his voice lacked the Syrian accent he had perfected. "Well," he said quietly, "I suppose there's no point continuing this particular game." With his identity acknowledged, Cohen confirmed basic biographical details: his birth in Alexandria, his immigration to Israel, his Mossad recruitment, but refused to provide operational information. Even facing execution, he maintained disciplined silence about his intelligence activities. "My work speaks for itself," he told Colonel Mossad. "You already know what I accomplished. The details are irrelevant now." The damage assessment. Cohen's silence did nothing to diminish the growing sense of dread among our military commanders as we pieced together what he had already accomplished. What would you do if you discovered that a charming dinner guest had memorized every detail of your home security system, including where you hide the spare key? After Cohen's confession, we immediately assembled a special committee with our most experienced counterintelligence officers to determine exactly what information had been compromised during his 3 years operating in Damascus. This was about understanding our own vulnerability on a scale we had never before encountered. The committee's work was urgent, as we needed to know what defensive information had already reached Tel Aviv and what military secrets might soon be exploited against us. The assessment began by meticulously tracing Cohen's movements throughout Syria since his arrival. What quickly became apparent was both shocking and demoralizing to our senior military staff. Through his carefully cultivated relationships with high-ranking officials, Cohen had managed to visit nearly every significant military installation in the country. These were comprehensive examinations of our most sensitive defensive positions, often guided personally by the very officers responsible for their security. "He went everywhere," one general remarked during our committee meetings, his voice hollow with realization. There wasn't a single important military site he hadn't visited, photographed, or mapped in some way. What made this revelation particularly disturbing was the manner of these visits. Cohen wasn't sneaking into these locations, he was being welcomed as an honored guest, often by commanders eager to impress this wealthy, well-connected businessman who they believed supported the Syrian cause. The committee's investigation uncovered a methodical intelligence operation. Cohen had systematically collected information on Syrian defense plans, noting the exact positions of fortifications along our borders. His apartment contained detailed notes about artillery positions he had visited, complete with information about range capabilities, ammunition supplies, and crew rotations, all gathered during friendly conversations with officers who considered him a trusted friend. Most concerning was his repeated access to the Golan Heights defense network. Senior officers had personally escorted him on multiple tours of our northern fortifications, proudly showing off the defensive systems designed to protect Syria from Israeli aggression. Cohen had been granted extraordinary access to observe our bunker systems, command centers, and the precise layout of our artillery positions. He had effectively mapped our entire northern defense strategy, creating a blueprint that would later be used to dismantle it piece by piece, like a master chess player who had memorized every possible move his opponent might make. This privileged access allowed him to gather intelligence that would later prove devastatingly effective during the 1967 conflict. The committee found evidence that Cohen had transmitted the exact coordinates of all our secret gun emplacements on the Golan Heights, providing Israel with a comprehensive understanding of our defensive capabilities. "Every time we showed him something, we were effectively showing Tel Aviv," said one committee member, a colonel who had personally hosted Cohen at his home several times. The realization that these friendly dinners and social gatherings had been part of a systematic intelligence operation left many of our senior officers feeling a profound sense of personal betrayal, alongside the professional security breach. The damage extended beyond military information into Syria's political landscape. Cohen had identified divisions within our leadership information that could be exploited to create confusion during critical moments. He had cataloged the various factions within the Ba'athist leadership, noting personal rivalries that could potentially be leveraged against us. His relationship with then-President Amin al-Hafez represented the apex of this infiltration. Cohen had ingratiated himself to such a degree that he was reportedly being considered for appointment as Deputy Minister of Defense. This revelation sent shockwaves through our intelligence community. We had merely placed an Israeli spy at the heart of our defense establishment. Our assessment revealed Cohen had documented every new Soviet weapon Syria received, including capabilities, quantities, and deployment locations. He had transmitted detailed plans about Syria's project to divert the headwaters of the Jordan River, allowing Israel to preemptively target this vital national project. The Special Committee's final report to President al-Hafez contained a grim prediction: the information compromised by this operation will significantly impact Syria's defensive capabilities in any future conflict with Israel. This prediction materialized with devastating clarity during the Six-Day War, when Israeli forces moved against the Golan Heights with an understanding of our defenses so complete, it was as if they had designed them themselves. The speed with which Israeli forces captured the Golan Heights can be directly attributed to Cohen's intelligence. Israeli units advanced with surgical precision against positions they should never have known existed, neutralizing our defenses while minimizing their own casualties. Our carefully constructed defense network, once a source of national pride and security, collapsed like a house of cards under the pressure of an enemy who knew exactly where to push. The public trial. The military damage was done, but there remained a deeper wound to Syrian pride that demanded public healing. What followed wasn't merely a trial of one man, but a carefully orchestrated national spectacle where Damascus's elite would confront the charming friend who had systematically betrayed them all. After weeks of intense interrogation and damage assessment, the Syrian leadership reached a unanimous decision. Eli Cohen would face justice not behind closed doors, but in the full view of our citizens and the world. This was about national recovery, demonstrating strength after a devastating breach of security. The trial would serve multiple purposes: punishing the spy, demonstrating Syria's resolve to Israel, and most importantly, restoring our people's shattered confidence in their government's ability to protect them. The Damascus Military Court was chosen as the venue, its grand architecture and formal atmosphere, projecting the seriousness with which we approach this breach of national security. The courtroom was redesigned specifically for this trial, with special areas for international journalists. The court's normal capacity was doubled through additional seating, allowing more officials and citizens to attend what would become the most significant espionage trial in Syria's history. We issued formal invitations to press agencies from 23 countries, explained the justice minister at a pre-trial briefing. We wanted to expose Israeli espionage methods to the world. Representatives arrived from across the Arab world, the Soviet bloc, and even several Western nations, whose governments were officially hostile to Syria, but whose press couldn't resist covering such a sensational story. The trial opened on February 21, 1965, with unprecedented security measures. Military police formed 3 security cordons around the courthouse. Every attendee underwent multiple identity checks and physical searches. These extraordinary precautions communicated to our citizens the significance of this case. What truly distinguished this trial was the parade of witnesses, Damascus's most prominent citizens, men who had dined at Cohen's table, shared confidences, and considered him a trusted friend, now had to publicly acknowledge their unwitting role in betraying their country. I watched generals, industrialists, and senior officials, men accustomed to projecting strength and authority, visibly shrink as they recounted their relationships with the spy. "He was at my daughter's wedding," testified one brigadier, his voice barely audible. "He brought the most expensive gift. He toasted the bride with beautiful words about Syria's future. The next day, I took him to inspect our new radar installations because he expressed such patriotic interest." Each testimony built upon the last, creating a comprehensive picture of Cohen's methodical infiltration. The gallery watched in stunned silence as Damascus's power structure publicly admitted its collective failure. The prosecution displayed all recovered evidence in the courtroom. Tables held Cohen's radio equipment, cameras, codebooks, and chemicals. Most damaging were enlarged photographs showing him alongside Syria's leadership at various functions. Visual proof of his extraordinary access. A large map of Damascus with red pins marked every home, military installation, and government building. Cohen had visited. Few significant locations in Damascus were without a pin. The visual evidence compounded the psychological impact on witnesses, many of whom saw concrete proof of how their trust had been exploited. Throughout this public dissection, Cohen remained remarkably composed. Seated in the defendant's box in a simple prison uniform, he maintained the same dignified bearing that had helped him win so much trust. He never interrupted, never made dramatic outbursts, never pleaded for mercy. This composure was disconcerting even to those of us who had captured him. Several security officers later admitted they expected him to break down, but his calm demeanor seemed to acknowledge he had played a dangerous game and accepted the consequences. The only moment Cohen showed any reaction was when his former friend, the Deputy Minister of Information, broke down on the witness stand. As the man wept openly, describing how betrayed he felt, Cohen briefly closed his eyes, his only visible sign of emotional response during the proceedings. The trial's impact extended beyond the courtroom. National radio broadcasts selected portions daily, and newspapers published detailed accounts. Public reaction evolved from initial shock to growing anger, as Syrians learned just how completely this foreigner had penetrated their society. People who had never met Cohen felt personally betrayed, questioning how their government could have allowed such infiltration. The most dangerous aspect of his operation was how he made us doubt ourselves, our institutions, and each other, our lead prosecutor explained. This psychological damage cannot be measured. The final day brought the inevitable verdict, guilty on all charges of espionage, with the sentence of death by public hanging. Cohen showed no visible reaction, standing motionless as his fate was pronounced. In the aftermath, Syria experienced extreme heightening of counterintelligence awareness. Foreign visitors faced unprecedented scrutiny. Even Syrian citizens with international connections were questioned about their loyalties. The trial achieved its primary objectives. It demonstrated Syria's resolve to punish those who threaten national security. It provided a public accounting of the breach, and it transformed a humiliating intelligence failure into a rallying point for national unity. Yet beneath this public display of strength, the nation remained deeply shaken, a wound that would influence Syria's international relations and domestic policies for decades to come. The failed diplomacy. While Syrians celebrated the capture of Israel's master spy in the streets of Damascus, a different kind of battle was already underway behind closed doors. With Cohen's guilt established and the death sentence pronounced, a desperate race against time began beyond Syria's borders. Israel would not simply abandon their most valuable agent without exhausting every possible avenue for his rescue. Prime Minister Levi Eshkol personally authorized extraordinary diplomatic measures immediately after learning of Cohen's capture. Within hours, Israeli intelligence officials were contacting every friendly government with potential influence in Damascus. Cohen represented years of investment and irreplaceable human intelligence capabilities within Syria. The Israeli government will spare no effort and leave no stone unturned to save the life of our citizen, declared an unnamed senior official in a carefully worded statement that avoided confirming Cohen's status as a Mossad operative. This public posturing masked frantic behind-the-scenes activity that would continue until the very moment of Cohen's execution. Israel's first diplomatic approach came through the unlikely channel of Belgium. The Belgian ambassador to Syria had established unusually cordial relations with President Amin al-Hafez, and was considered one of the few Western diplomats with genuine access to Syria's inner circle. In a private meeting just 3 days after Cohen's sentence was announced, the ambassador presented a passionate case for clemency. Executing this man will only intensify regional tensions at a time when de-escalation serves everyone's interests. The Belgian diplomat argued, a gesture of mercy would demonstrate Syria's commitment to international norms and potentially open dialogue on other matters. The proposal included vague references to possible concessions from Israel on water rights issues that were central to Syrian concerns at the time. President al-Hafez listened politely, but remained unmoved. "This is not a matter for international debate," he reportedly responded. "This man penetrated our government, betrayed our trust, and compromised our national security at the highest levels. The sentence is just and will be carried out." Seeking divine intervention, Israel turned to Pope Paul VI, who had successfully mediated in several international conflicts. On March 12, 1965, the pontiff sent a personal appeal to Syria's leadership, requesting mercy on humanitarian grounds. The Vatican carefully avoided political dimensions, focusing instead on universal principles of clemency. The Syrian response was swift and unambiguous. "While we respect His Holiness and his humanitarian concerns," read the official reply, "this case involves matters of national sovereignty and security that must be addressed according to Syrian law." As diplomatic channels narrowed, Israel escalated their efforts through increasingly substantial offers. Through French intermediaries, They proposed exchanging 3 high-ranking Syrian intelligence officers for Cohen, along with a financial package rumored to exceed $10 million for humanitarian development. Through Swiss back channels, they later offered a complete halt to military operations along the Syrian border for a year, the release of all Syrian prisoners, and commitments regarding water infrastructure projects. Each offer was rebuffed. The financial incentive was perceived as an insult to Syrian sovereignty, suggesting their justice system could be bought. When international businessmen attempted to leverage economic interests to save Cohen, a Syrian minister reportedly replied, "We understand this is part of a coordinated campaign. This man caused damage that no investment can repair. He betrayed our country and personal friendships that cannot be forgiven." This personal dimension of Cohen's deception proved to be the insurmountable obstacle. Unlike conventional spies, Cohen had ingratiated himself into Syria's elite circles. He had dined in their homes, met their families, and been treated as a trusted friend, all while gathering intelligence against them. As one senior Syrian official privately explained to the Italian ambassador, "This isn't merely about classified information. This man attended my daughter's wedding. He consoled me when my brother died, all while planning to use our friendship to destroy us. How can we show mercy to someone who so thoroughly abused our hospitality?" For a brief moment, there seemed to be hesitation within Syria's leadership. According to later declassified diplomatic cables, the defense minister advocated considering Israel's final proposal, arguing that the strategic advantages outweighed the satisfaction of executing one spy. President al-Hafez reportedly listened during a tense 6-hour meeting of Syria's National Security Council before delivering his final decision. "If we commute this sentence for any reason, political advantage, diplomatic pressure, or material gain, we send a message to every foreign intelligence service that Syria can be manipulated. The execution will proceed as scheduled." With days remaining, Israel conveyed a thinly veiled threat of retaliation. In response, President al-Hafez declared in a nationally broadcast speech, "Syria will not be threatened or intimidated. Our judicial decisions are sovereign and final. Any aggression against Syria will be met with the full force of our military and the support of our allies." On May 15, 1965, just 3 days before Cohen's scheduled execution, Syria's foreign ministry issued a formal notification to all embassies in Damascus. The Syrian Arab Republic has reached its final decision regarding the case of the Israeli spy Eli Cohen. The sentence will be carried out as determined by the court. This matter is closed to further discussion. The execution and aftermath. 3 days after Syria's final diplomatic rejection, Marja Square transformed into a theater of retribution. Thousands gathered in the heart of Damascus on that fateful morning of May 18, 1965. Not for celebration but to witness justice delivered to the man who had betrayed their nation's trust. The execution of Eli Cohen marked the midpoint of a mission whose devastating impact would soon become evident on battlefields Syria had yet to imagine. The square buzzed with tension as military trucks escorted Cohen to the gallows. Damascus had orchestrated this as a public spectacle, with international press positioned for maximum coverage. The message was clear: this is the fate of those who violate Syrian sovereignty. The crowd swelled rapidly. Shopkeepers closed businesses. Students left classrooms. Government workers abandoned desks. All converged to witness the hanging of the Israeli spy who had infiltrated their highest circles. Cohen's demeanor in those final moments struck many observers. No sign of defeat appeared on his face. When offered the traditional blindfold, he refused it. The Israeli agent stood tall as the noose encircled his neck. His composure remained unwavering. This final act of defiance unnerved even the executioners, who had expected fear from the condemned spy. He maintained his composure, demonstrating his unwavering resolve and defiance until the end, recalled one witness who documented the execution. This dignity in death later became part of the Cohen mythology. a testament to his extraordinary psychological fortitude. The most chilling aspect was the audience. Among the sea of faces were numerous high-ranking officials who had once welcomed Cohen into their homes, shared meals with him, and divulged state secrets. These men watched with complicated expressions, relief, embarrassment, and perhaps a hint of respect for the player who had fooled them so completely. One general, who had twice invited Cohen to his family home, stood stone-faced throughout. Only those closest noticed the slight trembling of his hands. A man confronting a personal betrayal. For many in Syria's elite, Cohen's execution closed one painful chapter, while opening another, determining exactly what each had inadvertently revealed to Israel's master spy. The Syrian government launched a comprehensive security overhaul within days. Intelligence protocols were systematically reviewed and strengthened. Anyone who had associated with Kamal Amin-Thabet faced intense scrutiny, with some officials removed from sensitive positions despite years of loyal service. Their crime was simple: they had been deceived. This extensive security review was a direct response to the profound damage caused by Cohen's espionage, aiming to protect sensitive information and restore trust in the government's ability to safeguard national interests, explained a former security official who participated in the reorganization effort. New verification procedures for foreign nationals were implemented. Additional clearance layers were required for military installations, and intelligence officers received enhanced counter-espionage training. The true reckoning arrived in June 1967, when Israel launched the Six-Day War. Israeli forces moved with unprecedented precision against Syrian positions on the Golan Heights. Their assault demonstrated an uncanny knowledge of Syrian defenses. Aircraft and artillery targeted bunkers and emplacements with surgical accuracy, neutralizing Syria's defensive network efficiently. This precision seemed impossible without intimate knowledge of the terrain, precisely what Cohen had provided. While Damascus portrayed the execution as closure, Israel's response followed two tracks. Official channels maintained a subdued posture, with minimal public statements. Behind the scenes, Israeli officials worked through international intermediaries to recover Cohen's body, efforts that would continue for decades. For many in Damascus, Cohen's execution appeared to be the final chapter. This confidence proved catastrophically misguided. What Syrian officials failed to comprehend was that Cohen's intelligence had already reached Tel Aviv, been analyzed and incorporated into military planning. The intelligence gathered by Eli Cohen had a significant impact on the outcome of the Six-Day War in 1967, confirmed a military analyst familiar with the conflict. His detailed information on Syrian defenses allowed Israeli forces to swiftly capture the Golan Heights with minimal casualties. Israeli forces captured the entire Golan Heights in just over 48 hours. Territory Syria had spent years fortifying. The loss was catastrophic both militarily and psychologically. Syria had executed the spy but failed to neutralize his intelligence. For Syrian military planners, watching the Golan Heights fall was witnessing a prophecy fulfilled. Camouflaged installations were destroyed in the opening minutes. The Israelis knew which fortifications were operational and which were decoys. The aftermath brought painful reflection within Syrian security circles. What made the situation particularly bitter was realizing that executing Cohen had done nothing to mitigate the damage. His strategic information had already been exploited fully by Israeli military planners. The execution in Marjah Square lingered in Damascus like a phantom limb, pain emanating from something no longer present. Each military defeat, each strategic setback traced back to that morning, became an echo of the gallows drop. For decades afterward, the public hanging remained an indelible scar on the nation's security consciousness, a wound that never properly healed as the Golan Heights, visible on clear days from Damascus itself, stood as a permanent monument to a spy's deadly effectiveness. The legacy of Agent, the captured territory, forever altered the Middle East's map. But beneath this geopolitical shift lies a human story that remains unfinished. More than half a century after Eli Cohen's body dropped from the gallows in Margee Square, his remains had become one of the most politically charged symbols in espionage history, the final battleground in a conflict that never truly ended. The legacy of Agent 88 extends far beyond the intelligence he gathered or the territories his information helped capture. His shadow looms large over both nations, though in dramatically different ways. For Israel, Cohen represents the pinnacle of what human intelligence can achieve, a single agent who penetrated the highest levels of an adversary's government and military circles. His name adorns streets, parks, and memorials throughout Israel. His story taught to school children as the ultimate example of sacrifice for national security. Cohen's legacy has shaped the modern understanding of espionage itself. Intelligence agencies worldwide study his methods, his tactical approach to gathering information, and the psychological dimensions of his operation. How did one man so completely transform himself? How did he maintain his cover under intense pressure? These questions fuel debate in intelligence training programs from Langley to Moscow. The emotional impact of Cohen's operations is profound. For Israel, his work represents both triumph and tragedy, an intelligence coup that came at the ultimate personal cost. His widow Nadia and their children have spent decades campaigning for the return of his remains, transforming a footnote in espionage history into an ongoing humanitarian appeal that transcends politics. Syrian perspectives on Cohen reveal equally complex dimensions. His infiltration represents a security failure and a profound national humiliation that continues to influence Syrian approaches to counterintelligence. The embarrassment of having been so thoroughly deceived by an Israeli spy struck at the heart of Syrian national pride, particularly given how warmly he had been welcomed into the inner circles of power. His successful infiltration of Syrian society and government, coupled with the devastating impact of the intelligence he provided, has left a lasting mark on the nation's collective memory, explains one analysis of the Syrian response. This collective memory serves as both a warning and a rallying point, a reminder of vulnerability that must never be repeated. Israel's pursuit of Cohen's remains has been relentless and multifaceted. Every diplomatic opening, every shift in regional politics, every new international mediator has been seen as a potential avenue to recover what remains of their fallen agent. The quest intensified in 2019 when Russia announced it was assisting in locating and returning Cohen's remains. Despite Israeli optimism, this initiative yielded no results, mirroring previous failed attempts through United Nations channels. Cohen's legacy stands as a double-edged sword in the intelligence world, cutting through enemy defenses while simultaneously wounding the nation that deployed him. His methods provided a template for successful deep cover operations, yet his capture demonstrates the terrible risks such operations entail. Syria views Cohen's actions as a profound betrayal, and his remains are seen as a symbol of Israeli espionage and a reminder of the damage inflicted by his intelligence gathering. This explanation barely scratches the surface of why Syria continues to deny Israel's requests. Beneath the official stance lies a complex tangle of emotions, politics, and power dynamics. Some intelligence analysts suggest that Syria's refusal serves as leverage, one of the few cards it holds in an asymmetrical relationship with a militarily superior neighbor. Others point to domestic considerations, arguing that no Syrian leader could survive the political backlash of returning the remains of a spy who caused such profound damage to national security. Former Syrian officials have suggested that Cohen's remains were moved multiple times after his execution specifically to prevent any recovery operation by Israeli forces. This practice of relocating the remains of high-value intelligence assets is not unprecedented in espionage history, though few cases have persisted as long as Cohen's. For today's intelligence officers, Cohen represents something approaching mythology, a story that encapsulates both the ultimate success and the terrible price of human intelligence operations. Young Mossad recruits study his methods, while Syrian intelligence officers learn from the vulnerabilities he exploited. Cohen's story resonates with broader audiences through books, documentaries, and dramatizations like The Spy starring Sacha Baron Cohen. These cultural depictions focus on the personal dimensions of his sacrifice, the family left behind, the double life maintained for years, the psychological toll of sustained deception. The territorial consequences of Cohen's espionage were immediate for Syria. The Golan Heights, once considered an impregnable defensive position, became occupied territory. Strategic high ground that had protected Damascus now threatened it. Water resources vital to regional agriculture fell under Israeli control. Newly declassified documents in 2021 revealed additional details about Cohen's operations that had remained secret for over 50 years. These revelations show how his intelligence-gathering techniques continue to influence modern espionage tactics, particularly regarding deep cover identity creation and social engineering, even as digital intelligence has largely replaced human sources. As the Middle East transforms through wars, peace initiatives, and civil conflicts, the question of Cohen's final resting place remains constant, an unresolved thread connecting past to present, a perpetual reminder of how a single agent can alter the course of nations. The lasting impact of Eli Cohen's operation wasn't just in the secrets he stole, but in how he gathered them. His success through relationship building revolutionized our understanding of intelligence collection. While agencies often focus on technological surveillance and cyber capabilities, Cohen proved that human connections remain the most devastating vulnerability in any security system. Cohen's legacy forced intelligence services worldwide to recognize that social engineering, the art of exploiting trust, can penetrate defenses no technology could breach. Even today, counterintelligence training emphasizes this vulnerability. In the shadowy world of espionage, the most dangerous weapon remains a smile and a handshake. What price is too high when trust itself becomes the battlefield?